that they should have done on any project like this. And when asked, why didn't you do the seismic study? He says, I didn't know how. At that point, the judge and the people said, oh, you didn't know how, that's okay. You're forgiven. Is that how people would react to that? No way. He should have known how. That's why he was paid to do this. And if he didn't know how, he should have at least got some consultants in who did know how, so that he could have made modifications to the design so that it would have been seismically safe bridge. Same with our conscience. If we understand that we are making decisions that's going to have repercussions, moral repercussions on our society and on other people, we have to form it well. And yet, most of us are not going to go and do 4 years of moral theology, or even 1 year of moral theology, to make sure we have that formation. So we need to make these kinds of forming find ways to form our conscience using our own experience in ordinary things and translate it to public forum and the issues we're dealing with. So I gave an example. I suggested when you vote, think in terms of the candidate. Would the candidate be a good husband or wife of a son or daughter of mine, or brother or sister or whatever? And maybe you should say, what if, that person that is dear to me only was trying to make a decision between two men, and one advocated this and one advocated that? What would I recommend? What would be my vote? He says, well, one is going to earn lots of money, going to be a good provider, but also, if he doesn't get the right son or daughter, he's going to abort that grandchild of yours. And the other one he maybe have a harder time financially, but he's going to love each child just for who they are, and going to be welcoming that child into the family, no matter what. Which would you recommend? Would you say, well, one had a better foreign policy than the other? Well, good. It's good that they have good foreign policy. That's important for our country. But if you put it in terms of family, they may be off a little bit on the foreign policy. Maybe he just does not like a particular nationality. He doesn't like, Bohemians. I'm Bohemian, and that's going to affect the family a little bit because he's got that prejudice against Bohemians. Well, yet, how is he on these other more key issues? So you can see how some of these things may be important. Or one of your possible candidates for marriage is an advocate for same-sex marriage and may encourage your granddaughter or your grandson to embrace the gay lifestyle. Would you want that for your granddaughter? I mean, it may happen anyway, but would you want that his parents really encourage it? So you put things in terms of that kind of issues that are dear to us. And I think it can help us make those moral decisions clearer. And so, I did this in my book I have a book here on dating, sexuality, marriage, and You know, I find a lot of young people, when they're thinking about marriage, they just, you know, do we enjoy spending time with each other? Do we like each other? Do we enjoy the same things? Which are not bad things. But then, I always like to ask them, well, are there any hidden expectations that the other person has that you might find difficult to fulfill? Hidden expectations. What are those? Well, I give an example. Well, if you're dating a girl and her father just happened to, you know, take care of all the gardening work and repair the automobiles whenever they broke down and just took care of those things, what is she going to expect of you when you get married? She's going to expect her husband to do all those things that her father did, like gardening work and repairing automobiles and stuff like that. And if the guy says, that's just not me, well, then you're going to have to address that issue, because that could be a very sticky point after you get married. Your wife may end up comparing you to her father. You're not as good a man as my father was because you don't do X, Y, and Z, which are things that men ought to do in their families. And so it's using those kinds of paradigms where you just, it's not what you normally think about. It can be healthy for you, helpful in making decisions. Well, I think we should be able to do the same thing in the area of the public forum, to try to look for you know, similar issues that, you know, are being addressed in public forum, that we can connect to issues in family and relationships. And I think we do. Again, we can clarify things. Another issue that may come up, I haven't put this in any of my surveys yet. Thank you. But the whole idea of in vitro fertilization and all the bioethical issues that are associated with reproduction. You know, how do you get to those kinds of issues and make sense of them? And one of the things that just occurred to me when I had to teach a course in bioethics is putting in terms of gift. And what are we saying by certain actions that we do? For example, if we have to do experimentation on the gametes, you all know what gametes are, right?
Yes.
Right? Gametes are the sperm or the ova, depending on whether it's male or female. But we do, sometimes experiments are done on those to see whether or not they're adequate for reproduction. But think, what do the gametes represent? You know, they are a kind of embodiment of the gift of self that we give to our spouse. If you're married, right? It's kind of like the child is an embodiment, the personification of the love between a husband and a wife, their union of spirits and bodies. It's been personified in a child. The gametes is the personification of the individual's gift to the other person. And how the person takes those gametes says something. And imagine a guy going to his girlfriend and says, "Honey, will you marry me?" And he hands her a ring with a diamond on it. And she says to herself, she says to him, look, before I accept this gift, I want to take it down to the jeweler and see what kind of gold this really is. And I want to make sure that that diamond is really, you know, a diamond and not just some artificial. What would that be saying? It says, the gift, it really is a person, it is a gift that represents his desire to give himself to his girlfriend in marriage for life. But she's saying, it might not be adequate. It might not be good enough for me. And so when we start doing that with something even more precious than a diamond ring, than an engagement ring, or even a wedding ring, and we start testing it to see if it's adequate, so it's saying something, isn't it? I think if we were to give this a, you know, an adequate analysis, we would say it would be immoral to collect and store gametes. And if we did that, there would be no frozen embryos, because there would be no embryos being produced. See, embryos are being produced not just by those people who want to have children. You know, doctors are experimenting with them. They're trying to improve their techniques and seeing if they can do it right, and and see if they can, you know, do genetic testings on these early developing embryos. And there's all sorts of stuff that's going on out there, as well as millions of children left in limbo. But if we suddenly transform our view of how we are treating the gift of ourself and what it is when in its representation, I think we would understand things. It'd clarify a lot of issues. I know I was actually talking to a good moral theologian about this. He and we were discussing things, other things too, but when I presented this to him, he said, well, what if by accident you spilled some of the gametes, you know, in a hotel room or something like that, and how do you treat those things? You know, if it were sacred. Well, it's one thing if it's a gift that's, you know, treated in an unsacred way. It's another thing if it just happens. I mean, I was thinking to myself, well, what if you bought a really expensive bottle of wine, you know, $200 bottle of wine, and you were having it at dinner and you poured your husband or your wife a glass, and accidentally one of them spilled it. Would you say, oh, you know, let's try to squeeze out that, you know, that tablecloth to get it back? No, you say it's an accident. It's, you know, the main thing is this was a gift that we were sharing our anniversary together, and okay, we're not thinking about the money or what is lost, but rather what did that bottle of wine mean as we were celebrating something that was important to us. So I think this idea of coming up with paradigms, when we look at these things, certain things stand out, keep coming up. Relationship and the meaning of our actions in terms of our relationships. The meaning of marriage keeps coming up. The sacredness of the person. And the notion of gift. The gift is so important. We could use another example here. We got a few more minutes here. You know, the whole idea of divorce. And you know, people say, well, you know, there are special circumstances that may warrant people to get divorced. Catholic Church says it may warrant that certain people get separated. What God has joined, no man can put asunder. But why does the church teach this? Well, think of it in terms of a gift. Marriage is a husband that gives his whole self to his wife and embraces the gift of self of his wife to him. There's a total mutual gift of self. Suppose we were friends and one day I got really in a grateful mood about our friendship, and I give you $100 bill. Said, look, this is in gratitude for your friendship with me, and would you be welcome that gift? It'd be nice, right? You take the $100 bill. I tell you, spend it however you want, this is for you. 2 weeks later, I come back and say, hey, where's my $100? I want it back. Well, wait a minute, you gave it to me. Yes, I know I gave it to you, but I want it back, it's mine. But I already spent it, Well, I don't care how you get the money back, I want it back because it's mine. That's wrong, right? Well, why can we do that with marriage, with our whole gift of our whole self, and we don't think there's anything wrong with it? You see, you put it in terms of gift, and it's just suddenly, oh, I have given everything. And what if the other person gave everything with this whole idea of forming a family and this is being for life, and realizes he can't get or she can't get married again because of their faith? It's almost like they've been deceived. It's almost like someone has taken back that gift that they so freely gave when they got married. So these kinds of key concepts come up. And I want you to remember them. So, of course, person, relationship, now I'm going to say meaning, and I'm always thinking meaning to the relationship. What does it say in terms of the relationship? Marriage, total gift of self, and then finally, gift. The notion of gift. I think with those key concepts, we can really simplify a lot of the, at least for ourselves, the situations in the issues in the public forum, in order to help make good, healthy, moral decisions that, again, how many passages of Scripture have I quoted here tonight? None. How many church documents have I mentioned tonight? None. I could have, but I didn't. You don't need to. The great thing about these kinds of concepts is they're universal. Anybody can understand them. And I have found that actually many times the non-Catholics get it more easily than the Catholics, because the non-Catholic has not tried to rationalize with all sorts of complex moral decision-making models, and just see it as it is, straightforward. And even if they're not living it, they can understand the reasons why this this makes sense. And I think we need to look for more ways to communicate that. And hopefully we can make some progress in this dialogue in the public forum to do what is right, both for our own families, but even for the country as a whole. Why don't we go to questions now?
Okay. Thank you, Father Weiss. Okay. Index cards with questions, please raise your hand. Thank you.